for coming to that meeting and giving all that good input. And I've been wanting to do this for a long time. Welcome to Conversations. It's really good to have you in that chair.
Thank you very much.
And I love the title that we have up for you. And welcome to the audience. The program today is one of the stalwart members of the MNN and the public access and other venues in the world at large, member of that group of people, and that being Barbara Rosenfeld. And she's got an interesting title. She's a Renaissance woman. I like that very much.
I'm glad you do.
The term comes off the tongue tripping, Renaissance man, Renaissance woman. That's very good.
Okay.
And you had a number of other things and hats you wear, including entrepreneur, poet, minister, producer. You've had a very interesting life, and we're going to want to talk about some of that. But welcome, Barbara, most heartily to the program.
Thank you, and thank you for calling me this morning.
Mm-hmm. This morning, yeah, right. It was about 4 in the morning, wasn't it? We were both up working on things, and so that's happened. I'm glad we could put that together and so forth. So, Barbara, we've known each other for a while and everything, but share with me a little bit your own background, and then we're going to want to talk about a number of things, particularly some of them relate to media. And I know you have entrepreneurial thought patterns, and you're very busy with the computer, very interested and informed on the computer and so forth. But talk a little bit about where you were born and raised a little bit, and then we'll talk about
I grew up in the Bronx, as you know, and I was hanging out in front of the candy store singing doo-wop with my little friends.
I love that. You got any of that on tape?
I don't have it on tape, and I didn't have a video camera at the time.
I don't think there were video
I don't know.
When...
I don't know, but I was having a Bronx experience.
Yeah.
That was a Bronx experience.
Could I share something with you?
Sure.
I had a real dear friend of mine, Marshall Pfeffer. He's a dear friend. We had a commune-like thing back around Woodstock time and everything. He was a real artist and everything. But he used to go around in the 50s, and he used to say the year 59 that he thought he would go with a recording device. It was rather large and everything. Mm-hmm. And he would just go up in Harlem or something, and there would be groups singing on the corner. That was so artful and so good, and he recorded it. He's got lots of stuff that was just recorded a cappella often, that kind of thing, because it was a great art form, wasn't it? You did.
I sang a cappella with a group of girls, and we were a girl group, but we weren't necessarily singing girl songs. We just sang whatever popular doo-wop. Yeah, it was fun. Right. That's right.
Yeah.
We were singing doo-wop on the streets. And then as I got older, I was hanging around Washington Square Park.
Great place.
And I even played in a jug band with your friend, David Peel.
Did you really? David
I
Peel,
did,
yeah.
I did.
Did you play the jug?
I actually played the jug.
Were you pretty good to that?
I was pretty good, yeah.
Nice guy, David.
Yeah, sweet guy. And those were the days when people were smoking banana peels.
Yes, mellow yellow.
It was mellow yellow, and I was into the host scene, and I was considered a beatnik at the time.
Boy, that's a very noble tradition, if you ask me. The beatniks come out of the Bohemians, who were the
and
artists.
I was listening to Bob Dylan even before anybody ever heard of Bob Dylan.
Great?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Great?
And all of those Woody Guthrie tunes, and
another great.
Listening to Joan Baez, nobody had even heard of her, and Dave Van Ronk.
Before she emerged, huh? Yeah.
That's right,
So
and I was listening to all of that, and my friends didn't catch on to that because, it wasn't a Bronx thing. I was always ahead of my time.
Okay, yeah. Well, and you're also, okay. Well, that was good. That's a great ground, and it was a great time.
And then as I got older, I was playing drums in the bars.
Drums?
I played
like
drums.
Snare drum, or?
I was playing along with the bass player, and
good for you, girl.
And
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I was having, I was doing my thing in the village.
Music was important to you, yeah?
Very important.
When you were doing the song, did you make the songs up yourself, or were they singing?
No, this was with groups that would play in the bars, and a piano player and a bass player, and it was good jazz.
Yeah, you like jazz.
I like jazz, yes, and so I worked my way around the village, and I was.
Let me ask you: you didn't get to the Woodstock Festival, or did you?
I didn't go to Woodstock. My friends did, and I was living in a commune.
You were?
I was.
I was too at that time.
I was living in a commune right next to the Bowery Lane Theater, and I was doing theater there.
Where's Bowery Lane Theater?
Well, I was living at 334 Bowery.
Oh, in New York, yeah.
And I was doing theater there, and it was a show called Morningside Heights, and it was about what was going on with the Columbia University Revolution, and and it was Mark Rudd.
Mark Rudd, God bless him.
And
yes.
actually, the cast of Hair came to see me perform.
Did they really? Yeah,
yes.
That's a great honor. So a theatrical thing, yeah. Francis Fox Piven was up there with Mark Rudd at Columbia. They were heady days, weren't they? Closing universities all over the place.
It was revolution time.
It was indeed. I'm of the opinion that was marking something very existentially significant in the evolution of consciousness. But the people who derided that time thinks it was just licentious sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Well, it was.
There was some of that. There was some of that, but there was something much more than that also, in my view. But anyway.
Well, I mean, I was very involved in the anti-war movement at the time. I was very involved in the Vietnam Peace Parade Committee, and nobody really understood why we were in Vietnam. And this amorphous thing called communism that we were fighting, and I couldn't quite grasp why we were there, and it was not a declared war, and I was rather confused by it, but I didn't want our soldiers to go there.
Right.
I mean, we're in the same boat right now.
Well, yeah, not quite in the same. I've heard people say they think it's more dangerous, the thing in Iraq and Afghanistan, than that, but it did get up to where 58,000 of our people killed.
Well, this is another amorphous thing, the terrorism. I mean, that's a very broad term, don't you think?
I think so, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, it's extremely broad term and vague. And I'm not sure we could pinpoint what it is.
Well, no, the UN can't come up with the definition because today's terrorists, they called Nelson Mandela a terrorist.
Well, a terrorist is a war fought without an army, without, I guess, institutionalized weapons or government.
Well, I think, I know the UN's not been able to come up with a definition. They've tried at the UN, and it's because one of the problems is that today's terrorist is tomorrow's great leader.
I guess.
And that's what happened. Like Nelson Mandela was called a terrorist, and I believe, I've said it before in other programs, but I think George III called George Washington a terrorist. It sort of just becomes a...
Well, Arafat was a terrorist, and then he became a leader of a people, and that wasn't even his country. He was Egyptian, and I don't understand that either.
There's some things you don't fully understand that make absolute sense and ring true to your ear, making you have no reason to have any angst at all from which you could get a poem or two.
Well, I wrote a lot of poems those days about the war.
You're good. Yeah, I think we all were. And it was just a magical time. So you were a poet then also.
I'm a published poet.
Ginsberg, you like?
I like all of that poetry, but I don't consider myself in that kind of class. But I wrote more spiritual type things.
Okay, you still have that? Did you?
I have
Did I hear you say you were published?
Right, and I write also adaptations of the Psalms.
Okay, the Psalms are really interesting. Yeah. I had a friend, I mentioned to you we were having coffee, my friend Alan Epstein. He had done a thing where he had worked on the Psalms artistically and so forth,
Right, you mean with calligraphy?
Calligraphy and other kinds of things. And
I dabbled in that, but I'm not an expert in that.
And so then you were on the side of the angels in terms of the peace movement and so forth, and you've been there. The beatniks that came out of the Bohemians, Moulin Rouge, have you seen that movie with Margot Kidman?
I might have.
Gorgeous movie, I think, and everything. But the hippie, and then the hippies came out of the beatniks, and we had this great movement that a lot of the people look askance at, but I think it marked a magic time. There were a lot of things going on. Martin King, Malcolm X, voting rights, all kinds of things.
That's right.
Progressive. It was a progressive moment.
That's right.
And it was something to remember fondly, I think. And so you've been following all that. And when did you get involved? Because you're a producer here. You're doing a lot of work here. Two things I know you are. you're very involved with public access television. You're one of the stalwart members here and so forth. And you're also very adept with the computer, and you also have entrepreneurial implications.
Right.
So maybe you could talk to some of those things if you would, out of this illustrious background from which you emerge.
All right.
And such a well-led life up to that point, if I may say so, yeah.
Back in the 80s, I got into computers because I wanted to be able to communicate with other people, and I got involved in doing BBSs, which are bulletin board systems. And it's not like the internet of today, because it wasn't really an internet, but it was relay mail. And people would post things on forums, and then it would be sent to a hub and then sent to, you know, dozens of other places. And that's how people communicated. And you wouldn't get a response, let's say, to an email till days later. So it was very interesting. And then when the internet really came about,
when do you date that from, that the internet really emerged, or the, you know, the whole cyber thing? When did it really emerge? The PC came out in about 1980, I guess, or?
Well, no, it was a little before that.
A little before.
A little bit before that. It's just that it became, you know, more consumer accessible.
Yeah, and got
till around
real
80.
Networking going.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. The Atari, do you remember the Atari?
Yes, but I didn't own one of those.
No, that was one where the early people had.
That was very early.
Yeah, yeah.
But
and it was because you wanted to communicate. What brought you to the computer? Were you interested in technology?
No, I've always been interested in technology, yes. I think technology is a good thing to have, but technology on its own, it's not a means to an end. It's something to enable you to do other things. And I think that the internet of today is a very interesting thing, because it enables people to disseminate information that we wouldn't ordinarily be able to do. And the same thing with public access. I think public access is a remarkable thing. And you said something last night about it being extremely unique in this point in history. I'd like you to tell everybody about that too.
Well, I could do that if you want, but I don't want to go into it. But it's just we're trying to. I think it's totally unique, and I'm ready to talk to people and make sense. But it's totally unique, partly in something so mundane as the way it's financed, because it's outside of the normally seen loci of power or influence in the society, the private sector, corporate, profit-making, and then they call it the public sector, but it's the government aspect of society. And there's power to tax, and then those are, and spend, set up programs, government programs, and regulate. And that's the loci within which all the news is done and everything. But the public access emerged about 1970, or the cable did, and it was financed and made possible something like this place, Manhattan Network, and 3,000 of them across the country, which is paid for out of a franchising process.
3,000 producers?
No, 3,000 entities, like a Manhattan Neighborhood Network, or facilities. And they set up a thing, and then the money to set them up, capital costs and operating costs, is done from the earnings of the corporation, and emerged out of that time around 1970 when the civil society was having a say on things apart from, and all of communication, like CBS had no obligation to do anything about helping the citizens make programs. The only thing, and neither did radio, and neither did television, or anything else other than public access, and they seem to have accepted this responsibility, and that's how these systems are financed, and that's a very, very interesting model, and I think it's something we need, something like that might even be, and they seem to have accepted it, and that's the way this system is set up, communication for the people. It's a very small sliver, but it makes some possibility for reasonably competitive voices of the people to be heard in communications like the DNA, and I think that's really significant. It should be vouchsafed and even celebrated. Yeah. And did you get involved in public access pretty early, or public access?
Actually, I think I mentioned to you last night that, you know, I was learning about public access about, you know, I would say about 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
But I really didn't get terribly involved until I really had something to say. There was something that I had to communicate to people, and this was the only way I knew how to do it.
You know, it was an issue thing that got you involved, a specific issue, or?
Well, basically, it has to do with history being written in such a way as to not be truthful.
Okay.
I mean, it's the victors who write history. So.
Always, yeah.
So, I mean, are we getting an accurate version of history, or are we getting, you know, Memorex?
Right. No, I hear what you mean. Yeah,
so,
I think it's always been that the winners write the history.
Exactly.
And yeah, okay. So, and that's the I think that's the idea that got you wanting to be able to communicate. And was it around certain books or something? Like I
was very inspired by someone by the name of Abelard Rushlin, who wrote a book called The True Authorship of the New Testament.
Oh, really? Okay.
And even though his methodology was extremely remote, but it was fascinating. I thought I would do some research into this. This was about at least 10 years ago.
Right.
And I thought I would do some research into that, and I followed through on it, and I discovered some very interesting things as far as literature is concerned, and that there was a war going on at the time that the New Testament was written.
When was it written? It was 400. But when was it put together? Is that Mark, Luke, John, and that?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they were done at different times.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, this was I can't actually date it because I'm not an expert in that field. But I had done some research, and I found that because there was a war going on, that it was written from the perspective of the victors of that war.
Yeah.
All right. So that was the emerging thing that was going on at the time. And so I did a little research on it, and then I found two people, Joseph Atwill, whom you've interviewed.
Yes, he's a great fellow, and he wrote in that book, Caesar's Messiah.
Caesar's Messiah was a great book.
Yeah.
And then,
thank you for putting me in touch with him. Yeah.
Good. Actually, since I've spoken to him last, he's just got his book published in Germany by Ulstein Press.
Good.
So I'm very happy for him. And his colleague, John Hudson, and they found some very interesting things, particularly that the authorship of Shakespeare's work was a black Jewish woman.
Boy, that's really interesting. I thought there was, who was it, Marlowe or somebody?
Right, well, he was murdered, but you have to understand why, because he understood what was going on in relationship to the falsification of history with regard to the New Testament.
But you got it that Shakespeare's work, Hamilton? No.
Shakespeare's work, the majority of it, I mean, we don't know if the rest of it is so, but the majority of it was written by Amelia Bassano-Lanier.
Well, be darned. I have not heard this.
I'm working on some footage that you'll be able to see.
Great, I want to see that. And who's done, is it Atwell's done that research, or is it coming from somewhere else?
Both he and John Hudson.
Yeah.
And you could go to www.darkladyplayers.com, and he's actually started an experimental Shakespearean company. And you could actually... He's got some performance in July.
Hudson is the name?
Right, John
Hudson.
Hudson.
That's my middle name, Hudson.
I know. Are you related?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if we are. They've run family trees back to Edward I in England, but that's another story. But,
well, he is British.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's really an interesting thing. I've not heard that.
So I've been dying to get this out to the public, and so I've been spending some time working on some programming and trying to disseminate this information in my hopes of exposing really a plot to do away with the Jews.
Do away with the Jews. Wait, what was the plot?
To create anti-Semitism. The war that was going on had to do with a certain Flavian family, Vespasian, his son Titus, his brother Domitian. And basically they rewrote history in order to create a pacifistic version of Judaism and to create anti-Semitism.
Oh, I'm trying to incorporate what you're saying. I don't quite understand. Why would a pacifistic vision of Judaism create anti-Semitism? I don't quite understand.
All right.
Fill me in. I don't quite understand.
The Messianic Jewish movement.
Yeah, it was the prophetic tradition is really rich.
The Messianic Jewish movement was at war with the Roman Empire. They started a kingdom within the Roman Empire, and so Vespasian and Titus, aside from Titus destroying the temple, replaced the religion with a more pacifistic version of Judaism. In other words, it wasn't a militaristic version that it was before the New Testament. So it was a rewrite of history, basically. I mean, you had a discussion with Joseph Atwell, and I think he explained all that to you.
Yeah, but I probably didn't get it all because I don't see the connection with the anti-Semitism.
Well, it was created because they wanted to do away with that Messianic Jewish movement.
They wanted to do away with the idea of the Messiah is yet to come.
Well, they replaced the Messiah.
This was after Constantine.
No, this was long before Constantine.
Before, I see.
Long
when that
before
300 period afterward, that they're writing.
It was even before then.
Okay, and they wanted to do
They
away.
created a character who was supposed to be the fulfillment of the Messiah.
That was Jesus.
Right. They created that character.
These are the emperors.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
All right. But in actuality, the story is all the battles of Vespasian and Titus through Judea, destroying the temple, destroying the Messianic Jewish movement.
Time? At the time?
No, not the time of David. The time of Titus.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So all the events in the story in the Gospels are actual events that happened during that war in defeat of the Jews. Gospel means gospel in Greek, evangelion, means good news of military victory. And it's been a mystery up until now. What military victory are they talking about?
Jericho?
It was the military victory of Titus destroying the temple.
Oh.
So that's what the New Testament is. It's not a piece of religious literature. In spite of the fact that a large portion of the world believes that this was an actual historical thing. It wasn't history at all, and it wasn't a religious document. It was an actual rewrite of actual history.
A rewrite of the play.
That's right.
That's really interesting, but there's a lot of people of the Christian persuasion who would take some exception to that, or not?
Well, I'm sorry, but they've been duped.
They've been duped into
worshipping Caesar.
They wanted to worship Caesar because the
That's right.
the
You see, the
emperors are
Jews
even taking on the way of a divine nature or something.
Jews wouldn't worship Caesar. I mean, every other cult within the Roman Empire was allowed to do their thing as long as they worshipped Caesar, but the Jews refused to do that, being as monotheistic as they are. They refused to do that, so they replaced Judaism. That's what they did. It's not an offshoot of Judaism. It's a replacement.
Trying to be a replacement, and I noticed there's still Jews around. Haven't you noticed? And
Jews,
this is 2,000 years later. They seem to have held on to those traditions and kept that going, but then it's associated with Constantine. When Constantine
I know, but that was much later.
Yeah, it was about 300 or so A.D. and so forth, and that's the story. And then that also keeps the idea that people get very arrogant. You know, Lord Acton said power tends to corrupt, and absolute power
corrupts absolutely.
Seems to have been played out. And I don't want to get away from that idea of Shakespeare. I mean...
But anyway, Shakespeare was written as revenge literature, actually lampooning the actual events in the New Testament.
One thing we know about Shakespeare...
But anyway, I'm not the expert in this, because you're going to see some...
Interesting.
You're going to see some more programming on this, and I don't want to give it all away.
On public access.
On public access.
You'll see it here first, ladies and gentlemen. It's not the only thing you'll see first.
You will not see this on mainstream television, that I could tell you.
In fact, I think most of the important things that are going to be emerging in our society are going to come out of public access.
So that's the thing that's coming out of public access that you will not see in mainstream television. So that's the thing that got me all excited about public access television, that I'm able to say things that people would ordinarily get killed for.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, people say a lot of things, but they couldn't say all of this on mainstream television, nor would mainstream television be interested in even talking about it. I mean, they didn't even want to cover the fact that that Kucinich brought articles of impeachment against the president.
I read the whole thing. It took 4 hours or something.
And it didn't appear on most of the networks and most of the papers. It didn't even appear.
Yeah, you're right. So you're looking at the fact that we're manipulated.
We are manipulated. Of course we're manipulated.
Who was the famous one? Vance Packard, the hidden persuaders.
Right.
They can lead us around with, and they do and everything. I don't want to get away from those two things, if I don't mind, because it's really interesting, the thing in Shakespeare. One of the things about Shakespeare is whoever did it, it created this absolutely divine use of the English language.
Yes.
Somebody created that.
Well, nobody writes in iambic pentameter anymore.
No, but the use of the language is just so gorgeous.
Oh, sure.
It's like Michelangelo with David or something.
That's right.
It's a real art thing. And you say it was created by a black Jewish lady?
That's right.
That's really interesting. They got that chapter and verse on where they get that
You're going to have to... You're going to have to
report this.
I'm going to report this. You're going to have to tune in.
When does your program air?
It's a special, and I will let everybody know when it airs. In fact, I'll let you know.
Can we get spotlights outside and have them go up in the air like Raman's Chinese theater? When we
yes.
Put that? Okay. Yeah.
All right. So, I mean, for more information, you can go to darkladyplayers.com.
Okay, Dark Lady Players, and that's Players, right?
That's right.
Okay, and that's got information about this...
About the authorship of Shakespeare.
Or this assertion that Shakespeare was really written by a black Jewish lady.
That's right.
Where did she reside?
She was within the royal court, and I think she was with the Henry VIII's son, and she also had an affair with Christopher Marlowe. But I don't want to go into all of this because
this isn't like
this is a spoiler.
No, I know. Okay, we don't want to do that, but it's just to whet the appetite a little bit. It's really interesting. It's like, what's that one, the Da Vinci Code or something, where they come up with all kinds of... Oh, I know. I'll make the... One of the things people say about public access is that there's no editor, there's no editing, and people can say anything, and it's, you can make all kinds of assertions, but they're in the established media. They've got fact checks, and they got careful reputations that have been built over long
this has been accepted as one of the 8 major candidates for the authorship of Shakespeare. It has been accepted.
There are 8 candidates?
There are 8 major candidates, but this is the most comprehensive and the most sensible of them all.
You think? Well, I'm anxious.
You'll have to look into it yourself.
Well, why couldn't it be? Just forgive me for being...
Because I'm not really here to talk about that.
I understand. No, but okay, but it's just inherently interesting. And why can't it be that just Shakespeare did it?
Because Shakespeare could not have, because he didn't have the background in music and in language that was within the work itself.
Well, okay. These are
all right, you're
going to
have to do a little.
Too, yeah.
You're going to have to do a little bit more research.
That's really
into that.
interesting. But then back again to the thing with the Flavians and everything, right?
All right.
So you had this thing, and so you had the Jewish tradition, and the Jewish tradition is like saying the Messiah, Mashiach, has not arrived, and it has a prophetic tradition that's held that together.
Well, Christianity says the Messiah came already.
Right. Now, wait a minute. So the Messiah...
I have to explain something to you.
is this all there is?
I have to understand.
Isn't there something better than this world? Is something that could be asked very nicely by a prophetic tradition.
If the Messiah has come,
wait until tomorrow, it's going to really come.
If the Messiah has come, where's the upgrade? I mean, you know,
yeah, right.
We're waiting.
This is beta test or something, right?
Right. I mean,
well,
you know,
that's yeah.
This was not meant as religious literature. It's war propaganda. That's all it is. It's not meant as religious literature. And I have to get people to understand that that what people tell you in the news and the media is also propaganda, and that you have to be analytical and examine things.
Yeah, critical thinking is important, right?
Well, we're not taught that in school.
You don't think we are? Yeah.
We're taught to memorize facts, or what is told to us as being fact.
We had a program last week. It's going to air this upcoming week, this week. And it was people who write children's stories. And children's stories convey so many moral and ethical lessons and everything. It's all done in such a way. But they've got to be able to think critically about things. And that's what you're
That's
proposing.
what I want people to think critically. I don't believe in blind faith. I think that people need to see evidence of things and to see the world as it really is. I mean, reality is not something that we're taught to understand.
It's also very, very complex and probably unknowable in anything like the certainty of totality, because it's so totally complex.
While in physics, you're taught that that experiments that are repeatable are more likely true.
Well, they have a scientific process.
Exactly. So I mean, that's how you discern
scientific method,
what's actually true if an experiment is repeatable.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
good
how
to
you
have a control group, and you have a peer study and all that
exactly.
kind of stuff.
So that's how you have to look at things.
Yeah, but then they can miss things too, even with the best intelligence.
Absolutely, they certainly can. But you still have to still pursue this reality.
Yeah, but the thing that's interesting to me is
we don't even know our origins yet.
We don't know who's we. A Homo sapien?
Life itself.
Oh, life. There's another one. That's another big singularity.
I know. I mean, we're assuming there was a Big
ago.
Bang, but we can't assume anything. We don't know if there was a Big Bang or many Big Bangs or what happened.
Well, no, but we have a certain canon of things that grow up, and then emerge and so forth, and we have certain knowledge, and now it's coming in every day. Over the transom comes a revolution in another field, filling in the gaps, and we're knowing more and more, and we're progressing and knowing more and more. I would have hated to live in the 7th century or something. It took decades to invent a tack or some little thing, and now it's revolution coming all the time.
You weren't allowed to publish things then?
You couldn't.
Not until not until Gutenberg were there books being distributed.
Yeah, Time did a thing on the most influential people in history, and he came out #1 because he started up the printing press. And,
right, but that doesn't mean that the average person was able to publish things.
No.
See, that's why public access is so important.
Isn't it wonderful?
I think it's great.
It wouldn't have been possible without the technology, and the technology is coming. And one wonders if, like we were talking about it last night, that we got that. But that prophetic tradition, without losing it, that idea, that prophetic tradition seems to me very important in terms of its keeping and opening upon the future transformation. I did a program with someone the other day, and I was talking about the fact that we know that from science and so forth that 650 million years ago, all fauna was in the form of a very simple, singular spongiform. That was the fauna had gotten to that point from the chemical transformation to life itself and everything. And so I'm thinking, and I said, and they're male and female, east and west, all those kind of things. There's two things, tensegrity, two functions in the universe that you could see. And one of them is, you get to a certain point, and, take an analogy, if you could put words into the mouth of a unicellular spongiform or something, they'd say, we got here. Here we are, up the primordial ooze, out of the primordial ooze. We got here. This is cool. This is pretty cool. Let's put up some curtains. and you know what I mean?
Well, I don't even know how that happened.
And round it out and everything like this. But then there's another force that's moving out, and moving up. And so we finally get to the point where we're actually able to take, But the idea of Stacy's, or the idea of where you are, is okay. But the prophetic tradition is luring us, if anything else, and on to a synergistic realization of greater realities that are going to be coming to you in the future. I think that's important, don't you think? Or maybe it also takes you beyond a consciousness of the moment or the thing to an inclusive consciousness, or maybe even the possibility of a transcendent consciousness to that which humanity has had, because there's been that kind of a pattern observable in evolution, and there will be a consciousness transcendent to what we've been in. And James Joyce called history a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. Do you understand? And the prophetic tradition is really important in that. I think it's been lost to a lot of people.
But I think that the only way to move forward is to look back and see where you don't want to be. I mean, we don't want to repeat all of those mistakes that we've made, like slavery. And all of those things.
That was a biggie, wasn't it?
I mean, it's not over. It's not over.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
In certain parts of the world, it still exists.
Well, it amounts to chattel slavery, and in some ways, the liberation is still not the lot of the vast majority of people. Anything like liberation or full realization of potential can't be realized, because we have all the remnants of slaves' history, his slavery and power relationships, where a few run everything, Vesuvius, the Flavians and so forth. And so you've always had a few people running everything, and the serfs are wallowing around in the mud. And they've got to be led around or coerced or something.
I know, but we have never had such pretty mud as we have now.
Okay, the mud is prettier. Huh?
The mud is prettier. I mean, just look outside. I mean, people are riding around in automobiles, and people have the comforts of home. I mean, you wonder why people are by the thousands, they're trying to cross our borders and get into this country.
Well, you're talking this country now, then. Okay,
this country. I mean, not the rest of the world. I mean, some of the world is, pretty much up to par with where we are, and sometimes even more advanced.
Do you think there's something more advanced in New York City? South Bronx? Is something more advanced than the South Bronx?
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody, countries have their charm, but there's a good portion of the population of the world who is still drinking water from mud puddles.
Absolutely disgusting. I don't think the system serves. At the outside, I would say 20% of the population are living something like would be called a liberated way.
Why is there a third world?
60 to 80% of the people are wallowing around and are in virtue.
That's right.
It's very close to slavery, because they have very little opportunity to realize anything other than a slave-like function within a system that's I don't know.
Why is there a third world? Why should there be a third world?
Well, it has something to do with power and economics, does it?
Well, you're the expert on power and economics.
Not really. I'm just trying to learn it.
You're trying to make sense of it all, like we all are.
Yeah, I think so. And then put it in a historical context. And that prophetic tradition is really important. And in the Islam world, the enemy du jour, it used to be communism. Now it's the Arab Islamicist, or Islam, that is becoming the emerging terrorist target of the West. I am sort of attracted.
They're victims too, Well,
we're all victims in a sense. And there's a great line, that the world, when you look at it, politically, we all drive fiercely into the future with our eye fixed firmly on that rear view mirror. Right. And we can't think anticipatorily, we can't think ahead. The artists, some of the real artists are able to be like antenna of the race. They can pick up, like Picasso presaged quantum mechanics and that kind of stuff. The artists are, but on the whole, we're all transfixed by patterns that have been established, and we're looking backward by and large,
Well,
unfortunately, because we don't have enough futurists thinking ahead.
Well, there is no planning for the future, really.
Okay.
I think everything is done for expedience and for greed, mostly. But I mean, hundreds of years ago, maybe not even that long ago, people took generations to build buildings. Now they just throw them up. You know what I mean? They spend
tools that make it
generations
possible. Those Gothic cathedrals.
Oh my goodness!
Chartres, you ever been to Chartres?
No, I haven't.
Oh God, it's gory. I mean, the Gothic cathedrals that were built, or or even the pyramids.
Sure.
And the aqueducts in Rome, and they didn't have cranes that unfortunately sometimes fall down on people in New York City recently.
But they did plan for their future.
Yeah.
But we're not planning for our future. If we had planned for our future, don't you think that we would have built stronger levees in the Mississippi?
Well, they could have been. There were a lot of people who wanted to. It probably had to do with a cost-saving measure or cutting the edges somewhere to where you didn't. It's bad design, maybe. We don't have enough. We don't give enough appreciation to design, and things are predicated upon just market.
How about
terms.
contract bidding? Do you think that's a good idea?
I would think you'd want to have some sort of a system where, you know, feasibility and also the engineering design and the understanding of it.
Well, I don't think we have enough experts in this country.
Yeah.
I don't think we have enough experts. They're looking for cost effectiveness rather than the appropriateness of a design. I think they're not thinking about the future. They're talking about fitting within a budget.
Well, yeah, everything is done that way, and also within assumptions. Assumptions come out of what is human nature, and usually when people say, if you're to say like Bucky Fuller, we should say this is.
Oh, you love this guy, don't you?
I do indeed. He is a Renaissance man. You were a Renaissance woman, and you know, that connotes being interested in everything, and that connotes in turn being comprehensive. Interested in patterns rather than details, and most all of the education is teaching people to be able to become very specialized in something, because by becoming specialized you become valuable in a certain context by which you can earn money to buy food and rent and live a good material life.
You just gave a synopsis of the education system in the
yeah,
United States. I think people are trained to fill a job slot.
It's all better predicated upon that, and it's all done, and that's what I was talking about, those people we talked about, children's books. The children are, 5-year-olds are so open, and you could say the youth and the youthful energy is idealistic and thinking about visions and dreams and thoughts and poetry and all kinds of art things and so forth. But what the job of the parenting classes is to make sure that that kid doesn't get carried away with that kind of thing, but becomes practical. And practical means you've got to take care of the bottom line. You've got to take care and do what you have to do in order to pay the rent.
Well, that's what my mother taught me. I mean, she wanted me to be a teacher, so I'll have something to fall back on. Exactly. And I didn't want to fall back. You know, I want to go forward.
You're a Renaissance woman.
I guess I am.
And we live maybe in a Renaissance time.
Well, I would not want to live in the Renaissance of the past. I'd like to live in a Renaissance now of enlightening people.
Thank you very much. And then live in a Renaissance. That's right. Renaissance is rebirth.
Right.
And so rebirth means there was a golden past, and maybe some people thought Rome was a golden past, although they used to just kill people. They would go into those places. You see the Gladiator movie? They go and kill each other.
Oh, my father loved that kind of movie.
That's really pretty grim. But, I mean, we're doing that also. We've been killing I don't know how many species do make war on themselves. I think we're only us, and there's maybe an ant tribe or two.
Do animals do that?
Not many. I don't think so. They don't. There's not many animals that make war the way we do. And now we got weapon systems can wipe out the whole species.
Right.
Apparently, the modeling
We were
tells.
talking about that.
Haven't had that except for about 35, maybe 30, 40 years. We had it to where the weapon systems are species lethal. That's a new reality that's finally occurred.
Right. That we have to store in the back of our minds, because if you think about it, actually, I mean, we could be gone within 15 minutes.
Well, I was talking to you last night. I'd seen that Ted Turner on an inspired interview with Rose, and when they're on, we're really on.
I love Charlie Rose.
Yeah, he's really good at times. He's really good at what they're mostly all really good at what they do and everything. And but Rose said that, I mean, Mr. Turner said that that's the only issue before us, is that the weapon systems that exist, not inflection points of theory of relativity or some sort of thing like that, but systems that exist, particularly there's some things apparently from spy wars and strategic defense initiative and wave weapons and Tesla and drawing into kind of things within the thing that are so destructive that they have now, if they're to be set off, that they're species lethal. And he said on the program, that's the only issue really confronting us, that all of humanity can be utterly destroyed irreparably within about a half an hour.
This is true.
And they're still juggling balls and power relationships.
But they've upped the stakes. I mean, they've upped the stakes.
The evolution of events has upped the stakes. It's become
basically
existentially new. Reality as recently as.
But there is another issue.
Yeah, what?
Feeding everybody. I mean, that's the other issue.
Mm-hmm.
And we wouldn't have the problem of the weapons that can annihilate humanity if we just fed everybody.
Well, how about not only feeding, but also taking care of everybody, or allowing ourselves to do what we know we're capable. Now, we know we're able to destroy the species, apparently.
Yes.
It's only modeled. Some people would say, no, there'd be a couple survivors in New Guinea jungle or something, and that, that we can take the chance. But we know that. But we also know, in a certain sense, from modeling, that we have a capability of solving virtually all, with technologically augmented and proper political and economic decision-making and so forth, and design and so forth, of taking care of all humanity and the ecology.
And we should be.
And we don't do it because we're enthralled to outdated institutions that are from the past when we've come into a new era, and our leadership is not got the vision that is to be provided, because they're driving into the future with the eye in the rearview mirror, and the institutions we've inherited.
Because
and we're born
they're playing
into.
politics is what they're doing.
Playing politics, but I think you ought to be a little bit, because if you're talking, what are we talking about? When you talk about you can extinguish the species and a good deal of the fauna and other things, and then what would be the adverse side? It might be we're getting to something, that prophetic tradition? We might be getting to the point of something like liberation, or like punctuated equilibrium, or there will be another form of consciousness transcendent to human that is going to be emerging.
And you're more optimistic than I am.
No, not optimistic. It's a possibility
that
is equally
very
existentially
unlikely.
Significant as the destructive scenario.
It's very unlikely. It's extremely unlikely.
You think it is?
Extremely.
By the nature of the universe, or by the nature?
No, by the nature of human beings. I think we are a very imperfect species.
Okay.
I think we're a dangerous species.
You
but
do.
I don't know what's going to happen as a result of our destructive behavior. I mean, really, that's what we're doing. We're destroying this planet.
You think we are destroying the planet? Well,
oh, yes.
Okay. Well, you were talking about how good the internet is. I
think we need to. I think we need to communicate with one another in order to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to see that Renaissance you're talking about.
Well, no, wait a minute, if I may. Renaissance says rebirth. So it's not like we're going to be rebirthed to something that's been coming in history, or something we're not going to get back to Athens or
No, I wouldn't.
We don't want to go back to that. That was a slave system. The whole of the systems were slave. It's still slave system.
It's true.
You don't have liberation. So it's not a Renaissance. It's something new. Right. A new thing, like a liberation.
A breakthrough.
A breakthrough, quantum breakthrough of consciousness, and of consciousness in this part of the universe.
Yeah, but everybody's looking...
The end of prophetic tradition.
But everybody's looking for something outside of themselves in order to achieve that. They're thinking that God's going to save them, either that or destroy all of humanity and only save 144,000 people.
Isn't that interesting? That's a magic number, 144. 12 times 12.
That's right.
And they got that 144, and they're the ones that are going to be... Yeah, they got all these things.
But those things already happened. That had to do with the destruction of the temple.
But, yeah, okay. And it's interesting you're researching all of that.
I'm researching all of this.
But the prophetic tradition, they've got that in the Islamic world, too. They got the 12th Imam.
They're all
The
offshoots.
Mahdi is going to appear. That's looking forward.
It's another rewrite.
All right. But then, and the Judaic tradition of, you think this is Mashiach. You ought to look ahead.
Where's the upgrade?
Where's the upgrade in that? And they've even fudged on that. They had on the Mashiach notion, because it's sort of gone by the boards. They had most popular song about a decade ago in Israel was, the Mashiach isn't coming, he isn't even phoning. And so, good for Jewish humor, we'd be lost without it and everything. But the thing is, in a secular world, the prophetic tradition, Constantine made a big deal with power. And that Constantine thing, and now it seems to me like a lot of secular-minded Jewish people, because they're not supposed to do that without Mashiach. Where's the Mashiach?
Well, let me explain something to you about that concept.
That dialectic is a big one that we're confronting, because on the other side of that is the enemy du jour, which is Islam. And, you know, they're out there on the outpost on the frontier like John Wayne and Fort Apache out on the saying no good engine but a dead engine.
Well, they're victims just like we all are.
We all are.
You know what I mean? I mean, you think about it. But I wanted to explain something to you about the concept of Moshiach.
Okay.
There's supposed to be someone who's capable of being Moshiach or the Messiah in every generation, but there is supposed to be one grand Messiah who is a descendant of David, who is supposed to liberate us. But basically, the liberation really was supposed to be from Roman oppression. I mean, it's an outdated concept. However,
Moshiach is.
But let me explain something to you. As far as Jews are concerned, it's always something to aspire to.
Right.
All right.
Like
so
that,
basically, it's our feelings of hope to aspire to.
That's the prophetic tradition.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's,
and it seems to have gone by the boards.
Well, I don't think so. I think
well, that's
I think
an important question.
You have to understand Jewish thinking, and
okay,
that's not.
Yeah.
And it has to do with our actions, because Judaism is about creating the proper circumstance and conditions in order for Moshiach to come. So it doesn't matter really whether Moshiach comes. It matters that we as humanity create those conditions. You see? So it's always something in the future.
Well, that's reading things in a way that some people don't read it that way.
I know,
They
but
say it's in
our
God's
objective,
hands,
no, it's not in God's hands. It's in our hands that we create those conditions.
Well, there's a lot of atheists who think that, and I mean,
Well,
you can be secular, scientific, and all that, and let go of the prophetic tradition.
There are certain conditions
Mashiach
that we
isn't
have
coming.
to. Mashiach may come.
Well, wait. Okay.
But we have to create those conditions.
Well, okay.
All right, and Moshiach may be a concept of the totality of all of our efforts together.
Help me here.
To create that situation.
You've studied some Judaism and stuff?
Some,
I'm
yes.
Episcopalian.
I know.
You know, it's
Poor
horrible
thing.
to be Episcopalian. But anyway,
you know who else is Episcopal?
yeah.
Liza Minnelli.
Oh, is she? Right. Okay.
She said
well,
that.
I mean, it's there. But anyway, and never mind that. But the conditions under which Mashiach would appear as they read Torah, and the Torah, I know you were talking about the Flavians, and who wrote the Old Testament? That's pretty rend in tooth and claw. But anyway, the thing is that the conditions under which the Moshiach that it would be is that it would be within a world of universal justice, that it would be totally done with no military might at all being exerted in order to do it. It would be an elevated state of the whole of humanity, would be the context within which that would appear, and to rush and to rush that.
It didn't say the whole of humanity.
Okay,
it's incumbent upon the Jews to do that.
Well, okay, okay. This is I get from people, but it would be done totally with no military, and that it would be done totally acceptable, and it would involve a elevated state of consciousness on the planet, and particularly
through observation of the laws
of justice. And we do not live in that world.
Well, we have to create that world.
Well, okay, but why didn't they create that world
because
they wanted to those were the terms for the return, and they have not been fulfilled.
Because people have been destroying the Jews for a couple of millennia. Well, so, I mean, you know, you're going to kill us off, it's not going to happen.
I think that's oversold a little bit. Now, I know that's hard. If you talk to if you talk to Israel Schach or Chomsky or Edward Said and a lot, that on the whole they were pretty well off and so forth and that kind of thing. Everybody's been suffering. and it wasn't so terrible necessarily.
What wasn't so terrible?
It wasn't a constant pogrom and so forth.
I have to tell you that you haven't really studied history enough if you don't understand that throughout history Jews have been persecuted.
Well, a lot of people have been persecuted.
Well, that's
Practically
fine.
Everybody's persecuted.
Yeah, but they're not responsible for bringing about Moshiach. The Jews are.
The Jews are. I'm not so sure that you think, okay, I got things to learn.
Yes,
they got
you
this
do.
thing, tikkun, right? They got
Tikkun.
a thing,
Tikkun olam.
To love and to
Tikkun
heal.
olam, the healing of the world.
Yeah, Rabbi Lerner, you know, he's got a lot of interesting things to say and everything. But anyway, I think there's a dialectic with that Arab Islamic world we've got to do. And I think the lessons that are, they have to do with finance and things. And I think there's a chance of coming with relating to interest and the use of interest that they've held on to with Islam. They've got lessons in Sharia that are more important than those that we're trying to impose on the world, the West. So I think there's lessons coming out of the Muslim world, 1.4 billion people that are very, very influential, and that's part of the geopolitical context, but that gets into a whole nother realm. Really interested in the Shakespeare thing, and one more time, Black Lady...
Dark Lady Players.
Dark Lady Players.
DarkLadyPlayers.com.
Got another person who wrote Shakespeare stuff. One thing is created. It was created, that beautiful literature and everything.
Yes, it was absolutely beautiful, and now we understand what the literature means.
Okay, and now we have a beautiful lady here who is a Renaissance lady by... as you can see, and thank you really coming in, Barbara, for such a well-led life and all the things you're doing. I got an awful lot to learn, and I hope you're going to help me teach some of this stuff that you're learning yourself, and we'll share it, and we'll do it. And if it comes out, it'll come out on public access first, and we're all supporting.
I hope so.
We have a common synergistic interest in having public access strong and well in this world.
I thank you.
Thank you for viewing, and we're coming back again. I think we're out now, or we're not. We're almost coming out, so we got a few more. We got about 30 more seconds while they run the credits. So what shall we say in those 30 seconds? Haiku?
I think you
have
should
to get haiku, something quick.
I think you should put a plug in for ACAP.
Okay, ACAP. I put a plug in for Barbara Rosenfeld, and I put a plug in for, yes, I do. I think ACAP's going to become a major institution in the world society. But
organization.
Organization or
not institution.
You don't like institution?
I don't like the word institution.
Being a good old beatnik, right?
That's right.
And a hippie.
My hippie ethics.
Yeah, right. You don't want to, that's the system.
The system. I don't want the system.
We're going to have to have, the real challenge, we're going to have a system not only liberating the masses, but one that's going to include them who run the system of old in the pattern on their own terms like everybody else is going to have to do a thing. And that's the thing that we all ought to be, we're all in this game together. And we're going to have to relate to that.
We're all in it.
I think that's important. We're all in this mess or this liberation or whatever is going on together. That's something we all ought to understand.
Well, I think we're all here because we're not all there.